Hello, welcome to another in our series of CMMI Tech Talks, looking at specific practice areas within the CMMI model. In this talk, we're going to review the Process Asset Development practice area, otherwise known as PAD. We will discuss the intent of this practice area and look at what value it can provide to an organization, as well as looking at the individual practices to see how they can be used to build the process assets an organization needs to operate effectively. Process Asset Development, PAD, is one of three practice areas within the Improving Performance Capability area, which is in the Improving category. Process Asset Development is very closely related to the Process Management, PCM, practice area, which also is in the Improving Performance Capability area. The Process Management, PCM, practice area is mainly concerned with the planning and management of the activity needed to manage an organization's processes and process improvements, whereas the Process Asset Development, PAD, practice area is focused on the practical implementation of those assets. The final practice area in the Improving Performance Capability area is Managing Performance and Measurement, MPM. And as we shall see, Process Asset Management, PAD, also has close links to this PA too. We shall start our review by looking at the key mandatory model components, the high-level intent and value statements. Intent develops the process assets necessary to perform the work and keeps them updated. Value provides a capability to understand and repeat successful performance. As we can see from the intent statement, PAD has a very specific mission. It is there to provide guidance on the development and subsequent update of all process assets needed to perform the work. Let us just pause for a moment and have a look at a couple of the key items of terminology. First, the title of the practice area is Process Asset Development. But what exactly is a process asset? The CMMI glossary definition states, an element of a process that has value to the organization or work effort. An asset can include hardware, firmware, software, systems, information, measurements, databases, and templates, as well as the processes and procedures themselves. From this, it should be apparent that the term process asset encompasses a very broad range of potential items. Anything that might be helpful in defining and supporting the processes of an organization is an asset. Typically, the most obvious assets will be process descriptions and operating procedures, but invariably, these will be supported by other related materials such as guidance notes, templates, training material, tools, and other items of process infrastructure. Hence, PAD covers the development and implementation of all related process assets, some of which may be quite substantial items in their own right. The second piece of terminology to consider is the phrase, the work. The work of an organization is whatever the staff need to do to make it operate and function successfully. It covers much more than just the core business, but also includes all the ancillary functions that are needed to keep the business running effectively. Additionally, the term is deliberately wide-ranging to ensure that it includes any type of organization. Just as developing new products involves work, so too does delivering services, and PAD supports the development of assets to help in all such situations and many more. The value statement points to a clear relationship between well-defined processes and repeatable, successful performance. The practices of process asset development go up to practice group level 3 and reflect the expected evolutionary progression towards increasing capability. The level 1 practice simply expects us to develop some process assets to perform the work. At level 2, this somewhat ad hoc direction becomes more directed and managed, and we consider exactly what process assets we need, how they will be acquired, and how they will be made available to the people within the organization. Finally, at level 3, we take a much more organizational approach and encounter several practices that all direct us to focus on different aspects of the process assets that are required to support organizationally defined processes. Let us look now at the individual practices of process asset development. PAD 1.1 is a typical level 1 practice, which is simply looking for us to develop some process assets to support the work being performed. There is no direction to do this in any specific formalized or managed way. The key aspect of this practice is to start developing assets that support a process-based implementation of the work to be done. Unsurprisingly, Level 2, which is all about having planned and managed processes, provides guidance that directs us towards a more considered approach to process development. PAD 2.1 provides the essential first step in this process by looking for us to consider what process assets we need to support our work. As with most endeavors, the process development and management functions within an organization are usually resource constrained, so this practice helps to ensure that the limited available resources are targeted to the areas where the need is the highest. Having established what we need to support our processes, the next question is how to go about getting the assets. PAD 2.2 provides us with the 3 main strategies. We can either develop new assets ourselves, look at ones that we might already have within the organization and reuse them, or potentially buy assets from an external vendor. However we acquire our process assets, the essential next step is then to make sure they can be used. PAD 2.3 looks for us to make our processes and supporting assets available by the organization so they can be used. This means not only do we have to ensure they can be physically accessed in some way by those who need them, but also that their existence is effectively communicated to the organization so that the staff know they are available for use. Level 3 is concerned with processes that are defined organizationally, and while PAD has relevance even in Level 1 and 2 organizations, it becomes especially important at Level 3. At Level 3, the process work is performed on behalf of the entire organization rather than just at an individual project level. This requires a considerable degree more management and planning than is required at just a project level. The Level 3 practices reflect this increased focus, starting with PAD 3.1, which looks to establish a strategy for building and updating processes. Because process work is now taking place across the entire organization, we need to be far more disciplined in how we develop, update, and roll out our process assets, so we need to develop an overarching strategy that delivers the process infrastructure that we need in a cost-effective and sustainable way. In addition to an overall strategy for the development of processes and process assets, another key component of an organizationally defined process set is a description of the process architecture to be developed. PAD 3.2. A process architecture describes the structure within which the processes and supporting assets are held and maintained. There are 2 main components to a process architecture. The structural architecture describes the physical framework within which the processes are organized and managed. The content architecture reflects how the data is organized within the structural architecture. While the content architecture is liable to evolve as the organization's process needs change, the process architecture would usually remain quite static unless there was a significant change in the organization's approach to managing its processes. PAD 3.3 introduces the concept of a process asset library. While the process architecture provides the structures within which process assets can be organized and managed, the library is in effect the front door for people wishing to use the processes. The library includes all the organization's set of standard processes, together with all their supporting assets, and most importantly of all, the library must be accessible to all members of the organization if the processes are to be used routinely. When considering organizationally defined processes, tailoring guidelines, PAD 3.4, are of particular importance, as these are the mechanisms that enable a standard set of processes to be tailored to meet the specific needs of an individual project of organizational unit, OU. The tailoring guidelines reflect practical options within the process set that can be changed, added to, or removed, and those areas which, for specific business needs, must remain in place as specified. Tailoring guidelines are the key process asset that enables individual projects to define their own project process, the primary defining behavior of an organization operating at level 3. PAD 3.5 introduces the idea of standardized work environments. This helps organizations to reduce the costs associated with, for example, operating multiple different functionally redundant toolsets by establishing standardized environment definitions. Adopting a standard set of tools across an organization simplifies the training needs required and enables economies of scale to be realized. Different work environment standards can be defined on a role or functional basis, and these help to improve staff performance and productivity. Note that work environment definitions can cover all aspects of a work environment, not just the software and hardware tools required. Safety and security factors can be considered, as can the physical working conditions and workplace ergonomics. PAD 3.6 directs us to the last of the key organizational process asset components, the Organizational Measurement and Analysis Standards. Organizational measurement and analysis standards allow for consistent use of measurements and related analysis. If you look at the Managing Performance and Measurement, the MPM practice area, you will see that measurements should be derived from established measurement and performance objectives, which are themselves derived from overarching business objectives. Not all areas of the business will need to use the exact same set of measurements, but they should all be derived from a common set of objectives. An organization may have multiple measurement and analysis standards if the work is diverse and requires different approaches. Measurement and analysis standards enable the organization to identify the key measurements that are expected for certain roles or areas of the business. Consider, for example, an objective directing us to measure team productivity. There are multiple ways this could be measured, depending on the nature and stage of the work in question. Agile development teams might use velocity as an individual measure of their own productivity, but this is unlikely to be helpful when looking at the productivity of a whole project or department, and neither can it be directly related to a more traditional development productivity measure, such as completed and tested lines of code. By establishing appropriate measurement and analysis standards, the organization can seek to impose measurement commonality across different work areas, while retaining the essential flexibility needed to address common measurement objectives across different working environments. These, then, are the practices of the Process Asset Development, or PAD, practice area. To summarize the main points, PAD covers establishing a process asset development strategy, determining what assets are required, developing or otherwise acquiring the needed assets, defining a process architecture, establishing a process asset library and making processes available for use, developing key organizational process assets such as tailoring guidelines, measurement, and analysis standards and work environment definitions, and keeping all process assets updated and relevant. Thank you for joining us for this CMMI Tech Talk. If you have questions, please contact us at support.isaca.org.